today I want to talk to you a bit about this obnoxious camera setup right here. This is the DJI Osmo Action and the PolarPro ND Filters for the Osmo Action. And I think together these are making a pretty exciting change to the way we use action cameras. Of course, I want to give a huge shout out and thank you to DJI and PolarPro for making this video happen. But that being said, let's get into talking about this camera and these filters. As far as the design goes, there's very few physical buttons on the camera and most of the control is done through the touchscreens. There's one on the back as usual, and most notably one on the front as well that you can use to see yourself if you're pointing the camera at yourself to vlog or something like that. The camera is very durable and waterproof, just like any action camera should be, and it's actually compatible with the pre-existing GoPro mounts. That's right, DJI really did that, and if you're coming from a GoPro system, you can use the mounts that you already have. This camera offers fully manual control of settings like shutter speed and ISO, and it has a bunch of different options for frame rates and resolution. So it can shoot 4K at 60 frames a second and can shoot 1080p at up to 240 frames per second for some really crazy slow motion footage. It shoots in a D-Cine-like profile and even includes HDR video and can of course shoot raw photos, and all of these are settings and options that allow you to preserve more detail in your clips and photographs for flexibility when you're editing them later on. Like most action cameras, the Osmo Action is a fisheye lens, so you have that distortion around the edges, but it's something that can be reversed and removed in post very easily, and this camera even has an option to defish the image automatically and do it all in camera, which is something I haven't seen in any camera before and is a very interesting setting that's very useful for achieving that cinematic look. And perhaps the most notable, most talked about setting here that can help you to get some cinematic images out of this camera is the rock steady stabilization. It's crazy and it's basically like having a gimbal inside of the camera. I'm still not quite sure how it works, but all you need to know is that it's crazy and it works really well. As you can probably tell by now, the features of this camera are so useful because they allow you to go for a cinematic aesthetic, and that is where the PolarPro ND filters come into play here. ND filters are absolutely essential for achieving a fully cinematic look. I'm sure you've heard someone talking about them, describe them as being like sunglasses for your camera, and as stupid as that sounds, it's not that far off from the truth. They basically just darken the picture. This means that if you're shooting in bright lighting conditions like direct sunlight, you can darken the image and compensate for that lighting without having to raise your shutter speed. This is important because when you're going for a cinematic look, it's best to use a shutter speed that's double your frame rate. So if you're shooting in 24 frames per second, it's best to use a shutter speed of 1/50th of a second. If you're shooting in 60 frames per second, it's best to use a shutter speed of about 1/120th of a second. If you're shooting in 240 frames per second, 1/480th of a second, and so on. So ND filters are a super important accessory for any camera, but especially an action camera where you're gonna have a lot of motion in the image. And PolarPro is making some of the best ND filters on the market right now. With most ND filters, you have to screw them on and off of the lens's filter thread, but with these, you can basically just attach the lens mount that comes with the camera, switch it out for the one that comes with the ND filters, and then the filters are basically just magnetic, and you can attach them to the lens that way and easily switch them out and use a different one depending on the lighting conditions. The filters also come in a nice magnetized case for keeping them all together in your camera bag, and although it may seem like because these are just magnetized, they would pop off of the lens really easily and get knocked into the void, that's most likely not gonna happen. These do actually hold on extremely well from almost any angle. Finally, the filters I've been using for this video are the 5-pack ND filters, but PolarPro also has a few different sets of polarizing ND filters available. These are basically just a combination of a polarizing filter and an ND filter, so you get the same benefits we've talked about here in addition to the benefits of a polarizing filter, like being able to cut reflections off of water or glass and just get a clearer, more vivid image. What I find so exciting about this camera and these filters is that they give you the option to have that cinematic look on an action camera. Having this flexibility allows you to make your footage stand out from the rest and really make it your own unique style. So this is definitely something that's going to be staying in my camera bag wherever I go and no matter what I'm shooting. But that being said, I hope you found this video informative, and if you did, do feel free to share your support by leaving a like on the video, sharing it with your friends, or even subscribing to my channel. I upload 2 new filmmaking tutorials every single week. But that's all for now. Keep creating, and I'll see you in the next one.